Our conversation with Bob Pollock is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Mr. Pollock, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, it is. And by the way, you can call Bob. You can ask him questions. 479-1160. I would guess that there are people out there that have questions now, Bob, because here we are. The grass is really, really picking up, isn't it?
It is. All of a sudden, everything's turning green and buds are swelling and leaves are starting to come out on various trees and shrubs. And
3 or 4 days in a row with some sunshine is going to really help that, too.
Yes, it will. It's not going to be overly warm, but that's probably still a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let things kind of emerge slowly and gently is usually better than 80-degree temperatures for a couple days and then go back down.
Yeah. Well, when we get to this early spring, and I know I recall asking you this question last year, but I think it bears repeating your answer to this. I have some particular trees that I mow under that when the leaves get on the trees, those limbs, they go downward, forcing me to have to really manipulate my body to get the mower underneath them and zip on through. How do I go about trimming them and without damaging the tree? So give me a basic primer here on pruning lower branches off of trees.
Yeah, depending on the size, the diameter of those branches, a lot of times those branches might be smaller branches.
Mm-hmm.
There might be branches a little farther up on the tree that are larger and outcompeted those lower ones. And eventually, because of that, those lower ones will tend to get less light. They won't grow as fast as the ones above it. And then they'll also get weaker, and then they can start to weep. So if that's kind of the situation, and if you're going to just walk into the branch, or when you're riding, you're going to knock your head on it every time.
Yeah, that's the case.
Those are good candidates to what we call limit up or remove those bottom branches.
Mm-hmm.
If they get too large, and it's best to do that when the tree is younger, kind of decide where the lowest branch needs to be as that tree is growing. That way, when you make that cut and remove the branch, you don't have a large wound there that takes years to heal, or grow callus growth over top of that and seal it off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always better to do it sooner than later. Another thing that will happen is you'll have a branch come out, and then sometimes you'll get buds that'll open, and you'll get a branch that'll it's going out horizontally, and it's okay, but then you'll get side branches that'll come off and come down. And they'll usually come down at an angle.
Mm-hmm.
Those can you can go along and remove all those. So that's essentially, raising the canopy there as well. The main branch is good, but those others are weeping down and getting your way, and those are good ones to poke your eye.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. So these ones that I'm thinking of in particular with this one particular, it's a red maple. And I'm thinking of branches that are, or limbs that are between 4 and 5 inches in diameter back at the trunk. And I know that you've told me in the past, when you're sawing off or you have wounds on trees like that, it's not a good idea to paint over them. That's a bad idea, as a matter of fact, to paint over that wound. So how far back away from the trunk of the tree do I need to cut those? And then is there anything else I need to do with those?
Yeah, and usually we'll make a cut farther out and cut the tip of the branch off first, which reduces the amount of weight. You want to get it, so make a cut about a third of the way out from the trunk on the branch.
Okay.
And get that. And oftentimes I'll make a quick undercut, cut up from the bottom first through the bark, and then cut off that bigger part of the branch.
Mm-hmm.
And all that does is when you cut that off, it'll keep it from peeling. Sometimes you'll get the cut and it'll start to bow down, and then it might snap off and take some extra bark that you didn't want to have happen. So undercutting it first eliminates that problem. cut it off, and then you've got a piece there that is much more manageable that you can either hold with your left hand and cut with your right hand. And you want to just, as that branch comes off the trunk, it usually is wider or a little more swollen there, and then it starts to narrow down. You want to leave the raised area on there, just take the branch off. And the reason is you do not want to flush cut it.
Yeah. You want to leave that shoulder on there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's called the collar, and just leave that there because there are the tissues and the cells are in there that start to divide, and they will start to close off that cut surface. And so that's why we want to leave that there.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right, so that's good stuff for folks who want to do that. You talked last week with a caller about thinning of some shrubs that have shoots that come out from the ground, not the type of shrub that might leaf out from a branch that is already growing, but actually get new shoots out of the ground. You talked about that. As we look around the yard at our shrubbery, and we think we might want to trim back a little bit at the various foliage that we have. I know Extension has a lot of resources on that, don't they?
Yes, there's a fair amount on that. And so when we talk about fruit trees, hopefully you have your fruit trees pruned by now, at least your apples. They're probably starting, the buds are swelling, or they might even be out at about what we call half-inch green at this point, which is when we have about a half-inch of green tissue that you can measure. Those leaves have started to come out already. So we like to get all that pruning done prior to when that happens. You might have raspberries or black raspberries. You can get all that old dead growth out of there, get those thinned at this point so that we're ready to go when new growth starts poking up through the ground, which is not far off if it hasn't started already.
Mm-hmm.
You get some variability around the county just because whether you're north or south and your orientation to the sun as well. So if you're on the north side of a slope, things will take longer to get into spring, and if you're on the south side, of course, you get that full sun all day when we get sun, and things tend to come out there first. Yeah, and so you can touch things up now. Of course, a lot of perennials. Those are all. Some of those will be poking up new growth at this point, so it's good to get any of that dead growth out of there. Hydrangeas are another one where you may need to do some touch-up on those. It was a pretty mild winter. I noticed on mine that I might just have an inch or two of tip dieback on them. Some years they get killed all the way to the ground.
Yeah.
But right now the buds on those, for the most part, look really good.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let's take a caller, Bob.
Okay.
Here we go. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, Bob.
Good morning.
Good to hear you.
Likewise.
My question is about bulbs that are coming up now, like daffodils and narcissus. And is there any way to fertilize them so that you can strengthen the stems, because some of them come up and fall over? They bloom, but the bloom is so heavy that it causes the flower to fall over. Now, is there anything I can do to strengthen those bulbs?
Yeah, probably if there's too much nitrogen in the soil, for example, they may put on more growth, more leaves, and may be more susceptible when you have a lot of extra rank growth and fall over. So sometimes on these bulbs, it's easier to have less fertilizer on those, really. And then the other thing is sometimes we just have to prop these things up. We either have to put a cage or support structure around them to hold those blooms up in the flower stems, stalks.
Okay, so evidently caller hung up.
Okay, I'm glad. I thought that might have been me.
No, I think that was him. But okay, well, that's one of the things that people are thinking about right now is those early spring plants, and we're certainly enjoying the daffodils and the narcissi, and the tulips and all of that. We're also thinking about our lawns and the grass, and they're here in Indiana. Just from the evidence across the street and from what I've seen around town, we're about maybe in Indiana, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks ahead of where we are at my place, where the grass is just now beginning to green up. But you get these areas in the early spring where the grass gets really high in spots, in clumps, and then it hasn't really gotten going in other spots. Talk about that initial mowing that we do with our lawns at this point of the year when we're just getting started and the lawns are kind of uneven and maybe the ground's a little soft in this spot or that spot.
Yeah, and this is also a good time for seeding. So if, depending on how your lawn overwintered, there may be spots that need reseeded. Just the opposite of what you're talking about. We've got bare spots there. Mm-hmm. So now's the time to get that soil worked up and get that reseeded. And that's often true where we'll get these little patches. And sometimes those patches happen because you've had some help in fertilizing. You've had somebody come in and do some spot fertilization. And it might have been one of your friends, the deer, that came in and left a pile there. And, of course, that's manure or organic matter, and it has some nutrients in it. Mm-hmm. The rabbits will do the same thing. But that will allow patches of grass to get a kickstart and get going because there's extra nutrients there to grow. And really, you almost have to mow early for that situation just to mow that off, get everything evened up until the other grass around it catches up.
Okay. All right.
And it can be, sometimes that can also happen because of the species. You might have
seasonal grasses, you mean?
Yeah, it could be, or it could be a perennial grass that's grows more in a clump form.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So some of the fescues will be clumpy, whereas like Kentucky bluegrass spreads by rhizomes. So they're roots, they're modified roots, and you'll grow a root, and then you'll send up a shoot, and that root will keep going and send up another shoot. So those tend to be more aggressive and more even, and then we have these other grasses that tend to grow. It's just like a one plant that you plant in the ground, in a sense, and it just that you have to have a lot of those then to have a good turf.
And I know that you say that it is very, very important that our mower blades be sharp so that we're not tearing up the top of that grass blade, right?
That's right. So hopefully you had time over the winter or even last fall to get your blades taken off and sharpened, and any maintenance that needed to be done on your equipment, get that done over the off season so that when things green up here in a hurry that you're ready to roll. Fresh gas and all that good stuff.
Good plan. All right, Mr. Pollock, thank you so much for coming by to visit with us today, if only remotely.
Yeah, there is a, remember we're doing many more things related to the COVID-19 situation. There's a farmers market manager forum that's free that people can get involved in for those that apply to that. There also will be a webinar tonight that people can go in and sign up for free that talks about these stimulus benefits, and it's specifically for your farm and food business. That'll be from 7 to 8 tonight.
Okay, and we just need to go to what, your website?
Yep, extension.psu.edu. Extension.psu.edu.
Very good. Thanks, sir.
You're quite welcome.
Enjoy this beautiful day.
You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. 101.1 FM. 101.